Good morning. It's Jason Dean coming live from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is a Monday morning at 10:12. Pretty rainy day here. Kind of a warm day. Kind of need a lot of rain here in Maine. We haven't had any. We did the start of the spring summer season. We had a shit ton of rain, and then it's been dry all throughout the summer. Beautiful summer weather-wise, but we definitely needed a lot of rain. So, yeah, hope everyone's doing good. Hope everyone had a pretty fun weekend. So, yeah, today's show is going to be a show where we're going to be talking about Predator Badlands. I went last night with some friends to go see it. This movie was something I was really looking forward to, really anticipated to, like we, a few of us that went, we met for dinner. A couple of my friends we met for dinner before and some beers. We were talking and shooting the shit, and then I had a couple of later after dinner. Had a couple other friends that were going to join us for the movie. So it was about five of us, which is great. I love going to the movies with like a large group. I mean, I go to the movies. I haven't done it in a really long time, but I have no problems like going to a movie by yourself, especially if it's a matinee. But it's fun going with a group, because you can talk about it and whether it was a fun experience or not so great, and you can just chat about it, and it's I don't know, it's fun. It's a fun. It just makes for a really enjoyable time. When we always like, whenever we assemble this little group of friends, we always like hang out for a bit and talk about the movie and so. But we were talking when we met early for dinner and some drinks. We were talking about other movies that we, besides Badlands, other movies that that I'm looking forward to, or that we're looking forward to, that we're excited about. And I honestly couldn't really think of anything that, even now, I can't really think of any movies that are coming out that I am really, really excited. I know there are some. So it's kind of weird. I mean, I know this is like the slower time of the year for films, but still. So getting back to Predator Badlands, I was really excited to see this movie, and I was a huge Dan Trachtenberg, who is the director of this film. He also directed Prey, which I think is just an awesome movie. I think that movie, I've seen it quite a few times now. I remember that movie did not get a theatrical release. Um, it's a Hulu original. The same thing with this film, Predator Badlands, I believe. But Prey was such a success, and again, I did not see that movie for a really long time. I did a big show on the Predator franchise and my anticipation for Predator Badlands a few days ago. And I consider myself a fan, but I most of the films in the series, I'm not a very big fan. I love the first one, of course. That's a classic, iconic classic. The second one is okay. It's nowhere near as good. And other than that, the only movie that I've felt that is on par or just as good is Prey. And Dan Trachtenberg took over kind of the franchise, and he directed Prey, and then Predator: Killer of Killers, which is a animated movie, which I heard was really really good, but I have not seen that. And then he also directed this new film, this new version. And I guess, well, starting out, I guess for what it's worth, I have a lot to say about this movie. Um, when we went, there weren't a whole lot of people at the theater. And I know it was a Sunday night, but and again, I love going to movies. It's such a fun. It's one of my one of it's one of my favorite things to do when I have the time to do it, and when I'm free. Like I just love it. But it's pretty rare these days compared to, like, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, to go to a theater where it's packed. That's always been part of the fun. And this was Predator just opened. Predator Badlands just opened, I believe, on Friday. So brand new release, and I don't know. There was, you know, maybe one full row of people, and then we were sitting behind those folks, and that was really it. It wasn't a packed house. Um, the last movie that I saw in the theater, I think it was The Long Road, the new Stephen King adaptation. I saw that in the theater, and that was pretty packed. There was quite a few people, but there weren't there were not a whole lot of people in this theater, and I was surprised. I mean, yeah, it's a Sunday night, but geez, it's kind of it's kind now when I go to the theater, even though I love the experience and I've been going more often. I love the theatrical experience. It's I always get a little bit depressed when I go to a theater now because I'm one out of a few people that show up. It's weird. It's a very different time. But anyway, when Prey came out, that was strictly a streaming. The only way you could see that was through Hulu, I believe. I think that was the streaming company, and it was not going to get a physical media release at all, and which is crazy. And so Prey went on to become very, very successful. It became a huge film. And then there was an outcry by fans that it needs to get a physical media release. And then eventually it did. And then I saw it probably a year after it came out on DVD. Totally loved that movie. And then I went and bought it on Blu-ray. I think it was like earlier this year. I bought it on Blu-ray, or it might have been last year. And I've watched it a few times since. And I love that movie. And part of the thing and I think it's something that is needed for franchises. And I will say, I'll talk about things about Badlands that I really liked. And for me, overall, I will say it's pretty mixed. This film has gotten really good reviews upon its release. A lot of critics have really embraced this film. A lot of the YouTube
Powering.
guys and girls that I watch have really embraced this film. Cody Leach, Chris Stuckman, Jeremy. Um, I can't remember his last name, but most critics that I've come across have all like really embraced this film and have not double toasted, but which is I think is pretty accurate, but I think my opinion or opinions around this film are quite a bit different. But anyway, the thing that I loved about Prey was that, and I think it's a general rule that needs to happen with IPs or franchises, is I think it's really great when a filmmaker can, in this case, Dan Trachtenberg, where they can just take a risk and chance and give you something new and do something that is its own standalone film, its own independent universe, and go into it cold, even if it is an established character who's been around for years. And I think any Joe Schmo should be able to walk off, come in from the street and be able to sit down and enjoy it for what it is, as hopefully being a really good movie. You shouldn't have to have that thing of like having to have seen every conceivable movie around that character, and then in this day and age, all of the spin-off kind of television shows. It should be, I think it's the art of good storytelling, regardless of the genre or style. And occasionally it happens. And I think that was the biggest strength of Prey was that it was unique. It was really different. It was something we've never seen before. So all of those qualities were there. And I will say that for Predator Badlands, for the most part, that's the case. There is a real fresh kind of aspect to this film. It definitely is way more. I mean, yeah, you go back to the original Predator, science fiction, horror, and balls to the wall action. That's really what that movie is. The cast is pretty good in this film. Elle Fanning plays two different roles in this film. Demetris Kalaminchiki, sorry, I'm butchering his name, plays the Predator. Um, and I know I'm not all that familiar with I guess it's the Dark Horse series that came out in the '90s, where they did do a bunch of kind of comics and graphic novels on the Predator creature, and I guess there are lots of references to that series of where they go into more of the kind of the mythology, the origins of how the Predators kind of franchise, or the Predators world, like how they interact with each other as a species. So they do go into that quite a bit of this film, as far as the kind of the culture, and which is interesting, and it definitely has a super sci-fi vibe. I would say there's very little horror elements in this movie, very very little, and it doesn't have well, when I think of Predator, the original, which was such a, I think is probably, aside from the Terminator, probably my favorite Schwarzenegger movie. Aside from the sci-fi action and the science fiction and the action, it definitely delivers as far as the horror element, and there's a lot of suspense, and there's a long time before you see the alien creature, but there's a lot of mystery and intrigue and suspense in that film, and it's super gory, and definitely has that horror element, and I think Prey has that element also. This does not have, I don't think, has any horror element whatsoever. It's pretty much straight up science fiction and action. And I will say, I think Dan Trachtenberg took some really, I will say, the things about Badlands that I do, some of the things I do like about this movie is that I like that he did take some chances. There's a lot of things in this movie where there are some seriously big swings, and mostly successful. I like that he tried to do something really really different. Making the Predator character as the, more or less the hero figure or the protagonist, which we've never seen before. Typically, he's always like the villain. Kind of interesting. I liked the um, some of the characterization was pretty interesting. That's one of the strengths of the other movies, and especially with Prey, of where the characters are really well written. You have empathy. You care about what's going on. There's an emotional attachment to every character, and I think for the most part that was done pretty well for this film. And again, it really leans on to the kind of, you get into the kind of the cultural aspects of how the predator species like coexist with each other, the family dynamic, um, kind of their origins, which is very interesting, which we've never really seen before. It's, in the past it's been kind of hinted at, um, and again, there's some good. I mean, basically, there's only two characters in this film: Elle Fanning and then the predator creature. Um, the rest of the film, there really isn't any other characters or actors in this film. They're all synthetic robots and creatures. The Calcic is the, I think that's, I'm pronouncing the the name right. But the Calcic is kind of the villain in this film, which is like this great, monster, this unbeatable monster on this planet. And so the opening sequence to this film is really, really good, and it's pretty high stakes. It's pretty intense. It's a really good setup. Again, it really emphasizes it's pretty violent, and it really does kind of set up the story, and it comes out kind of all guns blazing. I think a lot of the look of this film, for the most part, for Badlands is pretty good. There is a huge, which I was a little bit taken aback by, but there is so much, and again, I think it was done pretty well because it's pretty smooth. But there is so much CGI in this film, particularly around the planet sequences and the action sequences. I don't really want to go into spoilers, but because I don't know, I think I would say overall to check this film out. Um, but there are so many sequences that involve CGI. A lot of the creatures, the forest, the landscape, the plants, all of these things. And we're basically, this whole setup is basically this predator creature is kind of an outcast by his family, and to be able to prove his worth as a warrior, he travels to this planet that is the most deadliest planet on in the galaxy, and he has to face this monster, the Kalisk, that is this uh, beast or monster creature that is, or alien creature that is the kind of the most badass thing in the world, and the trophy is to try to kill this creature to prove his worth, prove his, I guess, his manhood, and to take his head and to bring it back to become, it's like a rite of passage film. And the film gets into, again, it gets into the dynamics of the predator creatures, and it does have lots of references to the Dark Horse comics. There is a lot of action in this film, um, and there's so much CGI, which was, I don't know, I think was cool, but it was, I have to say, it was a little bit. There were times I felt a little bit overwhelmed by it, and I was very surprised. I was very surprised by the amount of CGI in these, and I think they did a pretty good job with, balancing. I know there were practical effects in this film, and I will say that there was a pretty good combo, a combination of big spectacle, that required CGI, and then there's some smaller, maybe more intimate scenes of where you can see that it was probably practical and in camera as far as effects go. And I think for the most part it was handled pretty well. But I will say, after about an hour or so into this film, I got this feeling. My first feeling after we watched this movie was, um, and I went. A couple of my friends that went had not seen, were not all that familiar with the other Predator movies. Some of them had not even seen Prey, and everybody had seen the original with Schwarzenegger, thank God, but some of them had not seen Prey, and their first reaction too was kind of the same. And I felt like at the end of this film, it was, I almost hate saying it, but I felt like it was a straight up Disney family movie in every way. And this movie was, I believe it's the first Predator movie to be a PG-13 film. And granted, it's like there is a shit ton of action, a lot of big giant set pieces. There is some really great sequences, some really great action sequences. And I understand there are no other human characters, so when it comes to fight sequences, there is not going to be any blood. the sequences, the action sequences, and big set pieces are basically alien creatures and battles, non-human characters, and synthetic robots. So obviously, there's not going to be lots of gore in the traditional sense that would give a film an R rating. But this has a PG-13, and for that, with that, I guess within those perimeters or how it's kind of set up, it does deliver pretty well as far as the action goes. Like it is a um, pretty much full throttle. But at the same time, I came away with this feeling, thinking, "Wow, this is such a Disney film. It feels like a. It totally felt like a family film, and it totally felt. The other thing that was really strange, but I felt like this movie was so much. Um, like I felt like once they went to this planet, this forbidden planet that was, where basically everything and anything on this planet can kill you. I automatically felt like we were on the planet of Pandora, like from Avatar, James Cameron's film. I felt like this is total Avatar vibes, um, which I am not. Honestly, I think those films are so overly hyped, and so given they're just given such accolades and praise. I can't understand it. There are good things about those movies, but and I just totally thought that this was overall my overall experience was that it was a PG. Um, it felt like a Pixar film. It felt like it was a total family film, and it had big time Avatar vibes, especially when it came into the sequences with the forest and the plant life, even where all of these things, trees are alive and they are can kill you. The grass, for instance, is all made out of shards of glass, and the plant life and vegetation is all poisonous and trying to kill everything and anything in its wake. And total Pandora vibes from Avatar. So that was strange. And then there's also this big tie-in. Again, I don't want to go into total spoilers, but there is a more or less a connection to the alien universe that they go into. That I was at one point I was like, okay, maybe this is kind of interesting, but at one point it was going further and further, and I was like, wow, any second they're gonna if they show if a xenomorph pops up in this movie, I'm gonna scream and I'm gonna run out of the fucking theater. That was my reaction, but they didn't do that. I felt any moment there was gonna be a xenomorph that was gonna pop up, and I was like, I'm fucking out of here. I am done because I am so sick and tired of what the Alien franchise. I can't stand it anymore. I have no interest in it anymore. It's as much as I love the two, the first two films, Ridley Scott and James Cameron. I I have such a bad taste in my mouth about all everything else after those films, with the exception of Alien 3 by David Fincher. I have such a bad taste in my mouth with the franchise and everything that they've done that it honestly it has diminished my love for the first two, which I hate saying that. I kind of feel like that's what happened with the Matrix films. Uh, with the first one being so good and such an iconic classic, and then the other two, the later films just being such a disaster. Oh, the fourth one. It actually has diminished my love of the first one because it was such it was so off the rails and just bad calls all around. And when they kind of introduce this thing slowly and subtly, it's not like full on, but they introduce this thing of trying to connect the Alien franchise with this franchise, I was like, I was kind of thrown off by that, and I'm like, do they really? Do we? Are we gonna go back to? We're gonna go back to beating a dead horse. We've and I at one point they didn't go there, thankfully, and I thought at any moment they're gonna show a xenomorph and an alien's gonna pop up, and I was like, if that happens, I'm done. I am checking out this fucking movie. But thank God that didn't happen. It was enough to keep my interest, but I also felt like very disappointed. In all honesty, like why did they have to do that? Why did they have to like? Because you know where they're gonna go. They're gonna. This is going to go into territory of where they're gonna bring back this kind of crossover series with the Alien and Predator characters, and it's inevitable now. And the way this film sets up, or I should say, the way Badlands concludes, it literally sets itself up for a sequel. So I I have very mixed feelings about this film. I really do. I don't think. I mean, I think with it does have all of the tropes of what a Disney film has. It's got furry sidekick um, characters. It has this like constant, comedic kind of thing that goes back and forth and small talk. It's a buddy movie. It's a road movie. It's a coming of age story. It's got all of those things that you see in every Pixar movie and every like real deal Disney film. It's got all of those moments, which I think, given that, I think they do make it work in this context of the Predator universe. But I still was like, it. I still it was disappointing. It was very disappointing, and it was enough to where I felt like there were a lot of moments where I was enjoying it, and I was like, okay, But then there were so many of these like cliched things again, like a Pixar movie or your standard Disney film. Every trope lined up 1 through 10. That I was like, again, it was a thing of like, okay, they're working in these perimeters, and it works for the most part. But then the other side of me was like, are you kidding me? Like, really? Why are we doing this? But on the other hand, I thought what Dan Trachtenberg did with this film in a lot of ways, as far as there are a lot of things in this movie that are fresh and new and unique that we've never really seen in a Predator film, and it does have like Prey, it does have this new freshness to it, like a clean slate, and you're going into seeing something that you haven't really seen before. But I have to say, the whole like once they got to the planet, I do not like the villain, the Kalisk, which is supposed to be this monster, the supreme badass. I did not like that character at all. I think there was zero. There was no presence. There was nothing behind his character that gave, other than him being, a giant monster, but there was no presence. There was no. I didn't really. There was nothing imposing about this character. So like this build up to him, the Predator, facing this creature. I felt like it was super super bland. There was no build up with the villain in this movie, and so the setup, knowing that they are going on this journey, or that he is going on this journey, and the setup and the talk of this creature, it was something that I was like, wow, okay, this could be really cool and badass, and it was like, I felt like once they kind of introduced the Kalskik, it was like all the air. There was nothing really there. I didn't really care about. There was nothing imposing or scary or menacing really about this character. And I was hoping that this movie was going to be a thing of where Well, again, I can't help but think, and I said it a few times after watching this movie to our friends that like it was so to me it was I mean obviously it was different, but I felt like I couldn't stop thinking about Pandora, the planet in Avatar. Where essentially that planet is the most deadliest planet in that film in the galaxy, and everything, plant life, all kinds of creatures can kill you at any given moment. And to me, it was like it was so much like that I could not. It stopped me from really getting into the movie, and I was like, it's such a carbon copy. And even at the end of the film, there's a big, I don't know, James Cameron apparently was very much involved in this movie, and it really shows. And there's this big thank you to James Cameron in this film, and I think what they did was I'm not totally sure, but I got this feeling that that they employed a lot of the effects team that has worked on all the Avatar movies for this film, because a lot of the creature designs, which I was hoping for more like, I don't know, more menacing creatures, not really. But a lot of the vegetation and these killer plants and killer, uh, flowers that emit all kinds of toxins and poisons and straight up, straight up Avatar effects, straight up. And I was like, that's totally like I'm like they literally go to Pandora, and it was like, and again, it's got that thing of where there's a lot of action and it's pretty thrilling, but it's not, it doesn't have the horror element. There isn't going to be that rawness to it. It's a family movie. It's a straight up family movie. And so yeah, it was very mixed for me. Very, very mixed for me. Again, they took this kind of Hollywood approach, or Disney. It's a Disney movie through and through. There are moments of some really great action. I do like that this film has something that's fresh around it. Elle Fanning's character is really cool, but then it gets so much into this whole like buddy movie, and where there's like they try to interject so much humor in this movie, and I think it's good until it's not, and then it's not very funny and it's very flat. Um, and then they interject these these cute little animal sidekicks that at first it was kind of cool, and then I'm like, no, I can't do this. And I was really kind of surprised. I thought it worked, but then I thought I was disappointed with them moving into trying to tie in this alien, trying to pull in the alien universe into this film. Um, but my biggest thing, and I guess I would recommend this movie, but my biggest thing was the whole like James Cameron Pandora vibe and the Disney vibe. It was just so obvious, and again, I've seen people talk about this movie, other critics and things, saying those very same things, but they've said like, yeah, it's definitely got those Disney vibes, and that kind of thing, and a family kind of vibe. But and within those perimeters, they still do a really great job, and the action is still really good, top notch. The characters are really great. It's a beautiful looking film, and it is original. And I think that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty fair. I think there are some things about this film that were really great. And again, I think the kind of the freshness, like what Dan Trachtenberg did with Prey, there is like this fresh kind of thing or vibe about this whole film and story, which I think is great and is needed for these IPs and these characters. But the whole kind of like more or less paint by numbers, family film aesthetic, family vibes, and especially the Avatar vibes, Pandora vibes. I that is that was pretty hard, and I was. I think those things were enough for me to where I was checked out, and I was kind of disappointed with this movie overall. There was one critic I watched the other night when I came home who had addressed that issue as far as the ratings go, and because I do believe every Predator movie has been rated R, and this is the first one that's PG-13. And there was a thing of like when it was announced that this movie was going to be PG-13, there was kind of like this. I don't know, maybe like you could say or call it that, but like a little bit of a backlash or concern by fans that this is going to be kind of a watered down, Disney version of Predator, and that there was going to be this, kind of thing, which is a big concern because the Predator films are brutal as hell, and they are violent, and they are very dark. And he's up until this point, he's never been kind of the hero. He's never been the protagonist or the hero character. So we're seeing him in a different way. So, but the same critic who was talking about these concerns, he felt that given that, and the fact too that there are no other like human characters in this film that get killed or slaughtered, so in a literal sense, there's not going to be that gore factor, with blood and gore and limbs being cut off and heads being cut off and spinal cords being ripped out like we see in the other Predator films. Which, okay, yeah, I get that. But there's still all kinds of great carnage and violence in this film, even though it's uh, violence involving other alien creatures and synthetics and robots essentially. But there's copious amounts of violence, and I get that. I totally get that. And that's true. So like, but I can't help but feel that there was um, probably pressure from Disney, and I definitely feel like James Cameron. Um, I feel like James Cameron rubbed his balls all over this movie. I feel like he just like kind of pushed himself into this movie and really, again, I think a lot of the effects that were in this film, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know for sure, but I really think the effects people responsible for the team that are responsible for the Avatar films did the effects for this film. Total Pandora vibes, and that was to me was really off-putting. I didn't like that at all, and I didn't like that it was so. And it's a weird balance because on one hand it's very creative. It's a new world. There's a new. Everything feels fresh and new, but then it is at its core, it's like a straight up Pixar movie, straight up, and the same themes. Even though I think the characters are really good, I was really taken aback by that. So this movie is very mixed for me. I think it has some really great things, but ultimately I have to say, now that it's been about 24 hours, I was pretty let down with this film. Um, I'm surprised that this film is not getting a little bit more, because every review I've seen for this film has been really really positive, and people have acknowledged that it definitely is serious. It puts out serious Disney vibes, Pixar vibes even, which isn't bad, but I'm it's to the point of where it's so obviously done in a way that I'm surprised not more people have been turned off by this film because of that, and that it is so obvious. And again, the thing that turned me off overall to this film was the James Cameron vibes. Used to be a huge James Cameron fan, but I think he's kind of a dick, and I don't like James Cameron very much. Um, I think his head has been so far up his ass as a director because he has more money than God, and he is, you know, he's gonna make these Avatar movies for the rest of his fucking life, and you know, they're okay, but they're not great. They're basically it's Pocahontas in space. I don't. There's so many things around those films I don't like. I think they're so overrated. And I think with James Cameron, you know, with him, how he treats his fans. You know, he like, you know, he shits on people all the time. He's kind of this egotistical maniac. And I just, it's hard for me to get past that, seeing his influence. And I think in his past, he's made incredible films, um, but not so much now. And it's so hard for me to get past the whole. I feel like this movie has such a James Cameron imprint that, or footprint, that I can't. It kind of prevents me from really liking this movie. But anyway, I guess that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So, have a good day. Peace.